How's it going, everyone? Doc here with Eyes Wide Shot Gaming, and today we are pleased to bring you a brand new build that we have put together called the D&D build. Let's get to it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on all of your Remnant 2 news, info, builds, and breakdowns, as well as many other games. This build was strictly made for players specifically like me that might not have the best dodge timing. Let's break the whole build down. For our primary archetype, we are running Invoker. With the Prime perk Visionary, we get double the base skill charges for all archetypes, and the activation of a skill reduces all skill cooldown by 10% instantly. Our damage perk Entranced also benefits us with increased skill damage by 30%, elemental damage by 15%, as well as skill and elemental critical chance by 5%. The only other useful to this build perk is the utility perk Mind and Body, which increases movement speed by 5% and damage reduction by 5% while we have an Invoker skill active. With this archetype, the skill we opted to run is Way of Kayula. This will cast a tidal wave dealing 652.5 elemental damage and conjures up a 30-meter rainstorm for almost 22 seconds. The allies inside the rainstorm gain haste, meanwhile the enemies inside the rainstorm gain drenched, both for 10 seconds. Drenched will reduce movement speed by 10%, and every few seconds, lightning strikes enemies, dealing 1305 base shock damage split amongst drenched targets. For our secondary and more important archetype, we have Invader. None of the perks on this archetype really help out with this build in the way we need them to. But the reason for this archetype pick is its skill, which is Void Cloak. With this skill, we automatically perfect dodge incoming direct damage for 87 seconds. Each auto evade reduces the timer by anywhere from 33 to 100% based on the damage absorbed and spawns a decoy for 3 seconds. Our entire build revolves around what happens when we perfectly dodge. This is in fact heavily reliant on our amulet and rings. Let's dive on in. For our amulet, we are running Crisis Core. When a single source of enemy damage exceeds 15% of max health, we automatically trigger effects that require perfect dodge to activate and gain 15% damage reduction for 3 seconds. And since the vast majority of enemies on Apocalypse difficulty seem to hit us for 15% or more, this will proc almost always. The rings we have on only complement what happens next. Our first ring is the Feedback Loop. On perfect dodge, we trigger a 3-meter AoE blast that deals 178.2 shock damage and applies Overloaded, which deals 178.2 shock damage every 5 seconds. For the second ring, we are running Mark of the Destroyer. On perfect dodge, triggers a 3-meter AoE blast that deals 310 explosive damage. So we so far detonate for 310 explosive damage as well as for over 350 shock damage. Our third ring is the White Glass Bead. On perfect dodge, applies a shield for 15% of max health. This lasts 10 seconds and cannot stack with itself. And finally, our final ring is the Burden of the Audacious. Decreases all healing by 50%, but on perfect dodge, heals for 25% of max health. So anytime either our Invader skill Void Cloak or our Amulet Crisis Core proc, we immediately gain 15% damage reduction, detonate with explosive damage, detonate with shock damage, gain a shield for 15% of our max health, and if we took any kind of damage, we heal for 25% of max health. Let's move on to our weapons. For our secondary, we are running the Starshot handgun. The damage on it, as well as reload speed, is nothing to call home about. But the mod, Big Bang, is our crown jewel with this weapon. This mod funnels all current mod charges into the next shot. The projectile deals 214 direct damage and 214 explosive damage per charge consumed in a 5-meter radius. The explosion applies 258.8 burning damage over 10 seconds per charge consumed, and additional charges consumed increase all damage by 5%, max charges being 5. With this weapon, our mutator is Pressure Point. It increases this weapon's ranged and mod damage by 15% to enemies within 7 meters. And at level 10, activating this weapon's mod triggers a fixed 7-meter blast, dealing 150 damage per 100 mod power spent in a single cast. Stack all of this at point-blank range with the Amulet, Rings, and Invader archetype, and we turn into one truly wild atomic explosion. For our melee weapon, we are running the Labyrinth Staff. It has no special mod, but basic strikes generate 10% additional mod power. Charge attacks perform an AoE which strikes all enemies within 2 meters, dealing 225 damage, which generates 50% additional mod power. This will help us gain our mods back up within 3 hits on our weapons. With this melee weapon, the mutator we have is Edgelord. It increases melee charge speed by 35%, as well as melee attack speed by 15%. This will further speed up our ability to gain our mods back. And finally, our primary weapon is another vastly powerful explosive weapon, the Starkiller. An amazing alien rifle that shoots high-velocity rails which penetrate enemies. Its mod, Gravity Core, basically fires off a powerful black hole for 4 seconds that sucks enemies in, and when expires, it detonates for 1,238 damage within 10 meters and adds 825 damage per additional enemy, and then divides total damage among all enemies. The mutator with it is Spellweaver. This will increase our weapon's mod damage and mod generation by 15% for 10 seconds when activating a skill, and at level 10, activating this weapon's mod reduces skill cooldown by 1% for every 100 mod power spent, totaling 15%. Our Relic Heart is the Profane Heart. It gives us an innate 3% lifesteal bonus, which when we fire off our weapon's mod will help us get our health right back to full if we do take any kind of serious damage. On the left, our stats. Health at 123, stamina at 109, armor at 232.6, and weight at exactly 75 so we don't have any ultra heavy belly flops. On the right hand side, we have our traits. Main focus should be on Kinship, Spirit, and Siphoner. And for our Fragments, as well as Prism, we are running skill cooldown, skill duration, and mod damage. The Prism focuses heavily on health, but again, this is because it's our best one and is subject to change. Let's take a quick look in the ward on how this build works, as well as a few highlights from Boss Rush. Optimally, we run up to the enemy, proc our Invader skill for safety, and fire off both of our weapons mods. Once we run out, we can use a charged melee attack to gain them back within 3 hits, ultimately doing solid damage to bosses and wiping the field of random mobs. I'll leave you here with a few highlights from our Boss Rush, and as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and until next time, so long.